Hello everyone and welcome to my guide on how to play a tank in Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning on the private server. So a tank in a PvP game is a bit weird. One of your main jobs is to be a CC machine. So you are supposed to be crowd controlling the enemy while defending your teammates. So one of the main ways you do that is by guard, which is a buff that will make the target take less damage. And then you have other tools at your disposal. You have challenge, you have taunt, etc., etc. So your main job is a CC, which is crowd control machine. And one of the ways that you can be, well, there are a few ways where you can be that are helpful, become successful as playing as a tank. So I will be going over the general guidelines, as this is not a guide on playing a Knight of the Blazing Sun specifically. This is just a general guide on how to play a tank as the archetype. So one of the main things when it comes to playing any class in this game, but even more so for a tank in my opinion, because playing a tank is very, very hard to do well. One of the main things is that knowledge is power. You need to know certain things. So having a good UI setup is it is quite important. You need certain things like tether, for example, which is this add-on right here that allows me to see the range to my guarded target and helps me stay within the guard target range. So that makes my life so much easier because I don't have to constantly, look around for where my target is. Same thing with Buffet. It is mandatory. That is the square above my head. You can see the guard icon. I can also see, if I go on the test dummy here, if I taunt, I can see my taunt and the taunt duration. Same thing if I do a challenge. You can see on the challenge targets that the challenge is on them, and I can see the duration. So knowing that gives me a huge advantage on where I call my challenges. The challenge buff is a debuff to the target you cast it on. So they will deal 70% damage to everyone other than me. So if you stand in front and you throw a challenge, you will hit anything in front. So that leads us into positioning. Positioning is incredibly important as a tank, because there are a few things you need to keep in mind. First of all, you need to keep in mind where your guarded target is, so you need to pay attention to the tether add-on. And also, when I guard a target, I usually have another target on a defensive so that I can quickly switch to that person if needed. I will be going into guard swapping a bit more later. But when it comes to your positioning, I mentioned challenge. So you can challenge and stand in front of a target. But if that target hits you 3 times, the challenge will disappear. So what you need to do as a tank, normally in warbands you have one tank calling the challenges, so that you can overlap and get the maximum out of this buff or debuff. So that is very, very, it's a very good thing to know where the challenges are going out. But what you need to do, what you can do as a tank when it comes to positioning is, for example, you will be, you want to challenge on this area here. So you challenge and then you don't go into it. You stay away. So you and your guarded target may be moving around to the sides or whatever, but trying to stay away so that they can't hit you, meaning you can have longer duration on your challenge. One of your main jobs is to be the buffer. You need to be a tar pit between your guarded target and your offensive target, so that they cannot reach and kill your defensive target. So you need to make it as hard as possible. So that is what I mean when I say that you need to be a CC machine. And to be able to do that, you need to use your entire kit to not be bogged down yourself. For example, all tanks have some sort of defense booster, which increases their defenses. In this case, Shield Rush, which increases my block, and with the tactic, it increases my parry. That gives me a higher avoidance rate with block and parry, and that avoidance rate can help me reach my targets. Being defensive effect and not dying immediately is very important as well. But then you have things like Juggernaut. You become filled with us of removing all snaring, rooting, silencing, and disarming effects. That means you can reach your targets more easily. So remember to use that. You have certain things like Shackle, for example, which can help you root the target in place. However, Shackle specifically is something you should be careful with, because any damage will break it. It's a 50% chance to break free, meaning that what could potentially be a 5-second root can be instantly removed, giving the target a 30-second CC immunity, which is this above my target here. Immovable, cannot be knocked back, cannot be rooted. That's part of having the buffhead. So if I knock this target down with smashing counter, I can see the knockdown duration. Now I know he is unstoppable, immune to stagger, knockdown, disarm, and silencing effect for 22 seconds. So that's also part of why the buffhead is so important. This will be lingering on my target here, so I know that I cannot knock down, punt, or whatever on this target now. So now, with both of these, he has complete immunity. So I know not to waste my cooldowns on him. So thinking about your positioning will be a great benefit. Another thing that when I play a tank that helps me a lot is I try not to focus too much on one thing. So what I mean by that is I try not to get locked on my target. For example, if this is a chop or something and we're trying to kill, my job is to snare, and I can do that while I just need to be near him. That's all I need to do, and try to be behind if possible. But all I need to do is be near, and I need to be CC, and I can look at everything else that is going around me. I can look over here and see, is the enemy coming in? Are they gonna come and try to defend the target? Where is his guard? Is the tank near? Yes, the tank is near. Then I'll switch, and I will try to knock that tank away so that we can get the kill on the target. It's very hard to do in big open RBR settings where there's a lot of people. But in smaller scale, it's basically mandatory to do that stuff. But what is important here, the important thing to take away from what I'm saying right now is that you need to look at everything. While you're paying attention to this target, trying to get the kill on this target, this dummy here, you need to look at, where is my team? Is their DPS moving in towards our healers who are standing, back over here in the corner? Because if they are, you need to be ready to guard swap to that target while you're still trying to, CC and be defensive. You may need to go and your defensive target can be still where I am now, your guard target, and your healer over here is getting pressured. And this is the target you're trying to kill. You may need to go back here, knock someone down, punt someone away, and then come back to your defensive target. So being able to, move and reading the situation, that's what makes playing a tank so hard in this. It takes a lot of practice, and there is a lot of things you need to do as a tank. Your job is very, very heavily... You're not going to be bored. One thing you need to do is using your shatter. So you can shatter a blessing. In this case, it's an enchantment. But on other tanks, you can do blessing, enchantments, you can do ailment or something. I'm not sure. But you need to be removing the buffs from the targets. So paying attention and doing that is one of the most important things. Then we come into when to use your skills and who to use them on. So I mentioned earlier that being a CC machine is a really huge part of your job. So to that end, you have a few skills that interrupt other skills on most tanks. For example, taunt. It can be done at a 65 feet range, and it will interrupt anything that is being cast, meaning anything that has a cast time or a channel will be interrupted. Instant casts you can't interrupt at all. You'll also deal 30% more damage, but that's not the point here. Same thing, for example, here you have Vicious Slash, which interrupts anything they're currently doing. So that leads us to knockdowns and punts. Punt meaning the knockback. So here I have Repel Darkness. It will knock my enemy away. Swordmasters have an AoE. Same thing with the Black Orc. They have an area of effect knockback where they can knock back a lot of targets. Using that willy-nilly will, first of all, it will cause your team a lot of grief, because if, for example, your team is getting ready to drop all of their big damage, area of effects or whatever on your targets, and then you see that your targets are starting to take damage, or whatever you decide is the reason for you using your area of effect knockback, that can actually save their entire enemy team. And even though you used it to get pressure, them having the immunities can lead to your team actually wiping, because you couldn't do it. Like, if they come in to dump you 10 seconds later, you will need to have that knockback available so that you can knock them back and stop them from channeling or whatever they are doing currently. So using your AoE knockbacks or even single target knockbacks willy-nilly will set your team back most of the times. Same thing with using your shackles or AoE roots. If you're going to be using your shackle and root, you need to call at your team that I will be rooting back here. Do no damage. Don't damage them. Don't damage them. Like, just stop. Let me do my thing and don't break this, because I will be very, very angry with you. Tried to do it quicker than that. That was just me being... same thing. If you are assisting a DPS target and you want to get a kill on the target as fast as possible, you need to let the other people know that I will knock down. So usually I say my knock, letting them know that I will be using my knockdown. You guys can save your global cooldowns and don't use your CC abilities. I will do it instead. So being clear and vocal about what's happening is a very big thing, and letting people know what's happening with the CC around you. So if, for example, on a Marauder, you need to call out that you're doing an AoE knock and where, letting your people know, unless, you know, someone else has told you where to do it and when to do it. Same thing with bellows. That's something that needs to be called as well, because not everyone can see your distracting bellow. It reduces the damage of the targets by 50%, which is incredibly useful. It can save your team quite a lot of headache. I'll see if I can get it up, show you the icon here. And this can be done from a great range. And now you can see I have the yellow icon on these 3 targets. Damage inflicted reduced to 50%. Sometimes you may see that your guarded target is trying to kill this construct, and you're being pressured by the target that is attacking, and you may think, oh, I'll just knock it back, even though it is at 10% HP, meaning you would have got a kill on it if only you hadn't done it. So you knocking back, trying to be helpful, can sometimes be detrimental. So think before you use your knockbacks or your knockdowns. That may actually lead to you making it worse for your team, which a lot of tanks actually cause more problems than they help. And again, just one thing, quick thing. Don't use your keyboard turn buttons. Use your strafe. Use your strafe and look around with your mouse. That will just help you so much when it comes to knowing what's happening around you. Oh yeah, so using your challenge, for example, if you see their melee terrain, because normally what will happen in a warband versus warband fight is your warband will come in and approach them, they will approach you, and then you'll start circling, trying to get to the other's heal line. What you can do then is, if they are here and they're reaching towards your heal line, you can challenge them while they're trying to go on your heal line, and then when they reach your heal line, they will do less damage to them. And then you can have another tank focus on their melee line. So that way you avoid overlap, and you will save your team a lot. And then we have an ability that a lot of tanks think that this is the only thing they need to do. So that is hold the line. You focus defenses against enemy fire, increases your chances to dodge and disrupt by 40%. That will work on allies behind me up to 50 feet away. Increasing by dodge if the disrupt is 15, and they can stack 3 times to give them a total of 45%. So knowing when to use this is important, because this doing hold the line and just running, it doesn't really do anything against a chopper, for example. It's completely pointless. It's a waste of cooldown, and it's a waste of AP. So yes, while you're trying to reach the targets, sure, do it. It can save your team, a bit of damage. But when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it, you don't really use it. Like, you really shouldn't be. It's not that good of a tool once you're in the fight. If you notice, for example, yes, there back here, there's a bunch of sorceresses trying to free cast on my healers. Go ahead. And, if you're defending the healers, go ahead and use it. Same if you're in a fort siege or a keep siege, you get your hold the line out and, try to defend your team. But don't just do this in a warband fight. This isn't helping anyone, really, because a chopper, their attack can only be parried. They cannot be dodged or disrupt. If you're a destruction tank, doing this against a slayer will do nothing because the rampage bypasses. So you really don't need to use this that often. I hardly ever use hold the line, and you can be very, very successful without it. Just remember, your job is to, 1, escort the DPS targets into the battle, and then defending the targets that you're supposed to be defending as much as possible. One of the main roles and possibly most important things you do as a tank in Return Reckoning is the guard. Guard will make your tank damage take 50% less damage, and you will receive part of that damage. So if someone were to hit your guarded target with 100 damage, you would receive 50, and your guarded target would receive 50. That damage you receive can be blocked by either parry or block. So stacking those stats are very important. However, I highly recommend binding your guard to a key that is easily accessible. Because you may need to, you will need to swap guard a lot. So going from target A to target B as it's needed. Don't just sit there on one target and never swap. That's not a good tank. That's a very, very bad thing for a tank to do. Be ready to swap as needed to the person that is close. So what I normally do is I have this DPS Erika Boost, for example, as my primary DPS target, my main target for assisting on. And then I have this guy, another target marked with my left click. So I can see where this guy is, and I can follow my guarded target due to the tether add-on, which I will be linking down below as well. So I can always keep an eye on my main target, and I can stay within guard range of my target. And I know that if pressure is needed, I can swap quickly. So make sure that you use your guard. It is incredibly useful. It also makes it so that in PvE, you get a percentage of the aggro they cause on a PvE mob, which is somewhat useful. And it even says here, damage received from this ability can be blocked or repaired unless the original attack is undefendable. That goes for morales and certain other things that are undefendable. So when it comes to guarding, make sure that you're active with it. Don't just put it on a target and then just follow them blindly. And remember, if you break the guard range, like here for 3 feet, you cannot. The effect doesn't work. You need to be within that range. You're not bound. Sometimes you may need to be over here to get a pump on a target. For example, if your guarded target is safe, you need to knock down a target, or you need to send them flying, or something to CC in order to save the group that's further there. So don't make sure that you're paying attention to where your tethered target is, but don't be, sometimes you may need to go out of guard range for a little bit, but that's a different story. So moving on, a tank is normally a defensive target. A defensive character. Even if you play two-hander, which means you put on a great weapon, in this case Knightless, you are still mostly a tank. Yes, you can build a DPS character out of it and try to do damage, but you're not going to be nowhere near as useful. And if you can't get your parry up, that means you're going to die to guard damage. So thinking through what you put on is very important, so you don't completely destroy yourself by not getting the block and parry up. And if you play two-hander, you need to get your parry up to survive the guard damage. So no matter what you do, you need to be defensive. And to that effect, there are a few stats that are very, very important. First of all, you need wounds. My wounds are a bit low. Actually, I would try to get this to around 10,000, but I'm still an invader, so I have a bit of a ways to go. But you need the wounds to survive the guard damage and the morale drops. Same thing. You need toughness. Toughness mitigates a flat value, so. And it's also quite late in the calculation when you take damage, so it becomes a really good stat for mitigation. But you need to get that, pretty high if you're going to be a tank in an open RVR setting. Initiative is also a very important stat. What it does is it lowers your chance to receive critical hits. So you need to get that as low as possible. So you need to get, in my opinion, 258 without a room press buff. Netting you around 300 in initiative is a nice spot to be at. So that's my suggestion, is to try to aim for at least 250 there. Your weapon skill will increase your parry. However, you may get debuffed. You may get your weapon skill debuffed. So stacking weapon skill, personally, I wouldn't recommend it, but it can be. You can get your parry up through weapon skill. Strength, you do need some of it to bypass, but if you're doing sword and board like I do, it's not really that important. You can do that by positioning. These are the most useful and important stats. Your block, parry, dodge, and disrupt. Those are all stats you need to get as high as possible. The best way to do that is through gearing. So you, for example, you get the extra block from the set piece bonuses. You can get block from flat pieces. I have block here, I have block, and then I get block from the shield. And so stacking the block is very, very important, because block, it gives you a chance to defend all attacks with a shield. Same as apart from parry. Parry only lets you defend against melee attacks from. So one thing with block and parry is they only work from the front. So if I stand in front of this target, I can block and parry. I get increase my chance. Yeah, you see here, parry, parry, parry. But if I turn my back to the target, I can't block or parry at all. So your positioning becomes really important. Again, positioning. So now this target can actually parry my attacks as well. So if I go from the side or from the back, he cannot block or parry. So getting your block and parry up and minding your positioning is incredibly important for surviving the guard damage. Dodge and disrupt are against the ranged. You can block, parry, and dodge. You can block anything. You can parry, dodge, or disrupt, but it needs to be from the front. So you can block a spell, but it again from the front. So getting dodge and disrupt a bit up will help you as well. And getting your crit below 0 is also quite good. So that's general itemization as sort of board. But when it comes to two-hander, normally you would, wherever you get block here, you would try to go for gear pieces with parry instead. Like for example, here I have the Bloodlord. I got parry, 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 parry. You see the pattern? I try to get parry on as many pieces as I want. And then I have Victorious here for more parry, and then I can go in with my Sentinel ring, which I do not have anything in, and I can get even more parry. And that is what I would use in my two-hander build to survive guard damage. But depending on what you're doing and what you're playing, you might want to gear differently. And some classes have better defensive boosts than others. Renown, you should put in defensive stats normally. But again, if you want to play full DPS stats on you, it can actually be kind of fun. So to summarize, playing a tank in Warhammer Online is a lot of work. You need to pay attention to everything that's going on around you, your positioning, their positioning, and the positioning of your teammates. You need to look and see, where is my challenge? Where's the CC happening? Do I need to refresh it, or do I need someone else to do it? Is it someone else's turn? Can I CC this target at all? Can I knock him down? Can I punt him? Can I do anything? Or do I need to wait for a few seconds? And if you need to wait for a few seconds, you need to vocalize that. So that leads into what, in my opinion, is the most important thing to do in this game. It doesn't matter what class you do. Is being vocal. Use your microphone. Tell your team that I can't knock him down for 3 seconds. We need to wait for 3. Because then they know to hold their cooldowns. And at 3 seconds, you knock the target down, and then you go. You do the damage. Or saying that because there's normally 2 tanks in a group. So if you and another tank are both going for the punt, for example, you need to let them know my punt. I'll punt the target. I'll punt the tank now. And after that, I'll follow up with a knockdown. So that the other tank knows, okay, I'm not going to do that, so I can focus on this other guy and crowd controlling him. Or if you're trying to escort your DPS target somewhere, or you're being damaged, and you get punted, you need to tell your tank, to tell your guard target, care, I'm punted. Or care, whatever their name is. Letting them know that you are not in guard range, and they need to be more careful. Same thing. My challenge. Calling challenges, saying, oh, my challenge, or my bellow, or my M4. Like, telling your team, oh, I'm gonna challenge this guy. Like, letting people know what is happening with the important stuff. You don't need to tell them that, oh, I'm taunting. But you need to, tell them what's happening. The one thing I forgot to mention. Both Choppa and Slayers have animations where they just wave their arms around. That's when they're doing Get to the Choppa or Retribution. You can interrupt that with taunt. So do that. Interrupt them all the time. That's really important. No matter what side you play on. And then... Yep. So being vocal is incredibly important. And having your, challenge on a macro in party chat, that's not good enough. Because no one reads that. No one reads the macros you put in. talk, use your mic, and you'll have greater success. So I think that's my guide on how to play a tank in Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning. So I will, my UI and everything else will be linked below. And if you have any questions, or if if my information, if you have any tips or thoughts, just write them down in the comments below. And I will see you in the next video.
Subscribe.